They said no one escapes Ammit. I stole my heart from the scales. Now every demon in the underworld is hunting me. The silence was a thick, suffocating blanket, heavier than the linen wrappings that had once bound my earthly form. I was Khepri, son of the Nile, a warrior who had died with a bronze khopesh in hand defending the honor of my pharaoh. My last memory was the roar of battle, the clash of steel, and the blinding flash of a spear thrust. Then, This place was not the sun-drenched fields of Aru I had been promised. This was the Hall of Ma'at, a vast chamber carved from an endless night. Pillars of obsidian, etched with hieroglyphs that writhed and pulsed with a faint, malevolent light, held up a ceiling that was a canvas of constellations, but twisted and wrong. The air tasted of dust and despair, and the only sound was the rhythmic thump-thump of my own heart, a sound I had not expected to hear after death. Before me on a raised dais sat the great gods of the Duat. Osiris, the lord of the underworld, was a silent, regal figure, his skin a solemn green, his eyes pools of ancient wisdom. Beside him, Isis and Nephthys stood as mournful sentinels, but my gaze was drawn to the central figure of this grim tribunal. Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom and judgment, stood before a massive golden scale. In one pan of the scale, he placed the feather of Ma'at, the single perfect feather of truth and cosmic order. My turn. My heart, still beating a frantic rhythm in my chest, was torn from me. It was not a painful act, but a profound violation, as if the core of my very being was being exposed to the harsh light of eternity. It was a tangible thing, a pulsating organ of muscle and memory, and Thoth placed it carefully in the other pan of the scale. The silence returned, so absolute it was deafening. I held my breath, a futile act for a man long dead. I had lived a life of honor, or so I believed. I had fought bravely, protected the innocent, and served my pharaoh with loyalty. My heart, I was certain, would be as light as a feather. The scale trembled. The feather of Ma'at remained suspended, a testament to its ethereal lightness. My heart, however, began to descend. Slowly at first, then with a sickening, inexorable pull. A gasp, a whispered exclamation rippled through the assembled gods. I stared in disbelief, my soul self screaming. What was this? What sin had I committed that would weigh down my heart so? The scales beam tilted further, the pan with my heart hitting the floor with a soft final thud. The feather of Ma'at, now high above, seemed to mock my failure. Thoth looked at me not with anger, but with an expression of profound pity. He gestured to a creature that had been lurking in the shadows, a thing of nightmare and hunger. Ammit the Devourer. Her body was a grotesque patchwork of the Nile's deadliest predators. The head of a crocodile, the mane and forequarters of a lioness, the hindquarters of a hippopotamus. Her eyes, glowing embers in the eternal gloom, were fixed on me, on my heart. A low growl rumbled in her chest, a sound like a landslide. Panic, cold and sharp, seized me. This could not be my end. Not oblivion. Not to be unmade, to have my soul devoured and cease to exist. I was Khepri. I had faced down armies, not this monstrous beast. This was not a warrior's death, this was erasure. My training, the countless hours spent practicing with the khopesh, the lessons learned in the heat of battle, came rushing back to me. I was a fighter, and even in this spectral form, that instinct was all that remained. I had no weapon, no shield, but I had my will. As Ammit lunged forward, her jaws wide enough to swallow my heart whole, I acted on pure instinct. I ran. My spectral form, no longer bound by flesh and bone, shot across the Hall of Ma'at. The gods' murmurs turned to shouts of surprise and outrage. Osiris rose from his throne, his voice a deep, reverberating rumble that shook the very foundations of the Duat. Stop him, he flees judgment. Ammit's roar of frustration echoed behind me, a sound that promised a chase to the very ends of this endless underworld. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to get away. I burst through the great bronze doors of the hall and found myself in a different kind of darkness. This was the Duat itself, the underworld of the Egyptians, a labyrinth of twisted paths and menacing shadows. The air grew thick with a supernatural chill, and the ground was a muddy, treacherous riverbank. I could hear the snarling of Ammit behind me, her pursuit relentless. But now other sounds joined hers. The air filled with the skittering of countless feet, the rustle of wings, and the low, guttural moans of things that should not be. They were the guardians of the Duat, the demons and spirits of the damned, summoned by the gods to bring me back. From the inky blackness they emerged. Skeletal jackals with glowing red eyes, their jaws dripping with spectral ichor. Twisted humanoids with the heads of serpents, their scales shimmering in the faint light. Winged monstrosities that flapped through the air, their talons extended ready to snatch me from my desperate flight. I dodged and weaved, my heart, my spiritual core still beating wildly in the pan back in the Hall of Maat. My survival depended on that heart not being devoured. I had to get back to it. I had to face judgment again, but this time, I had to find out why it was so heavy. The first demon I faced was a towering figure with the head of a crocodile and the body of a man. An emissary of Sobek, the crocodile god. It blocked my path, a massive khopesh of its own forged from shadow in its hand. It lunged, its teeth bared in a snarl. I sidestepped, my incorporeal form allowing me to pass through its blade. But the force of its attack was like a physical blow, a wave of cold that threatened to extinguish my very essence. I had to fight, but how? I thought of my khopesh, the familiar weight of it in my hand. I willed it into being, and for a moment a faint, translucent form of my beloved weapon appeared in my grasp. It was not solid, but it was enough. I parried the demon's next attack, the clash of my spectral khopesh against its shadow, one creating a shower of sparks that illuminated the dark. The demon recoiled, its form flickering. It was not my strength that mattered, but the strength of my will, my conviction. I continued my flight, the demons multiplying around me. I was a lone runner in a nightmare, battling my way through a sea of monstrosities. I saw the ferryman, Kariheb, who guided the dead through the Duat, his face a grim mask of stone. I saw the monstrous serpent Apep, the eternal enemy of Ra, coiled in the distance, a dark and malevolent presence. I saw Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming, his gaze following me with an unnerving intensity, neither hostile nor helpful, simply observing. I fought on, my spectral khopesh a beacon of defiance in the endless gloom. I was not just fighting for my survival, I was fighting for my truth. My heart was heavy, but I was not a wicked man. There had to be a reason. Then I stumbled upon a secluded grotto. The air here was different, warmer, and smelled of the sweet, rich earth of the Nile. There, on a throne of polished stone, sat the goddess Hathor, her face a vision of divine beauty and sorrow. She was the goddess of love, music, and joy, and her presence was a stark contrast to the grim reality of the Duat. "Khepri," she said, her voice a melody of pure light. "You have fled the judgment of the gods." "My heart is not heavy with sin, my lady," I pleaded, kneeling before her. "There must be a mistake. I lived a good life." Hathor smiled, a sad, knowing expression. "The feather of Maat does not lie, Khepri, but its truth is not always what you expect. You believe you lived a life of honor, and in many ways you did, but you are a warrior, you killed." "I killed in service to my pharaoh in defense of my people," I protested. "It was my duty." "Duty does not erase the weight of a life taken," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Each death you caused, each soul you sent to the Duat before their time, added a stone to your heart. That is the truth of the warrior's burden. Your heart is heavy not with malice, but with grief. The grief of 1,000 lives you ended. The sorrow of 1,000 families you left behind. You have a good heart, Khepri, a brave heart, but it is also a heart that has carried the weight of 100 battles." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. It was not a sin, but a consequence. My warrior's pride, my belief in my own righteous cause had blinded me to the profound toll of my actions. The weight of my heart was the weight of my humanity. "What can I do?" I asked, a sense of hopelessness washing over me. "I cannot change what I have done." Hathor's eyes, the color of a clear desert sky, held a flicker of something ancient and knowing. "You cannot change the past, but you can change the future. The Duat is a place of endless possibility, Khepri. It is a place of punishment, but it is also a place of transformation. You have fled judgment, but you have also walked a path of enlightenment. Go back to the Hall of Maat. Face the gods again, but this time do not run. This time, tell them the truth of your heart, not the truth of your deeds." With those words, Hathor faded, leaving me alone once more in the grotto. The silence returned, but it was no longer a blanket of suffocating despair. It was an invitation. I had a choice. I could continue to flee, to battle the endless demons of the Duat until I was unmade, or I could return to the Hall of Maat and face my judgment with a new understanding. I turned back, my resolve hardened. I would not be unmade. My heart, heavy with the weight of my past, would not be devoured by Ammit. It would be judged, and I would accept that judgment, but I would not let fear dictate my fate. I was Khepri, a warrior of the Nile, and I would face my final battle with honor. Not with a khopesh in hand, but with the truth in my heart. The demons of the Duat, The spectral jackals, the serpent-headed men, and the winged monsters were still there, but they no longer seemed as terrifying. They were not just obstacles, they were part of the test. As I began my journey back, I realized that my spectral khopesh was not just a weapon born of my will. It was a manifestation of my understanding. It grew brighter, more solid, as I accepted the truth of my heart's weight. I was not fighting to run away, I was fighting to get back. I was fighting for my truth. The journey back was a battle, a gauntlet of the damned. I faced demons representing my own past, specters of the men I had killed. I saw their faces, their fear, their pain. With each one I defeated, not with anger, but with acceptance. The weight in my heart felt a little lighter. I was not absolving myself, but I was acknowledging the toll. And in that acknowledgement, I was beginning to find a measure of peace. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I stood once more before the great bronze doors of the Hall of Ma'at. The doors, once a symbol of my escape, now represented my return. I pushed them open and walked inside. The gods were still there, their expressions a mix of surprise and solemnity. Ammit still waited, her hunger a palpable presence. My heart still sat in the pan, a testament to my burden. I walked to the center of the hall, my head held high. I looked at Osiris, at Thoth, at Ammit, and finally at the scale. My heart is heavy, I said, my voice strong and clear. And now I understand why. It is heavy with the weight of my life, the weight of a warrior's burden. It is not heavy with malice, but with the grief of lives I ended. I was a man of duty, but I was also a man of sorrow. I accept this truth, I accept the judgment. I looked at Ammit, her great jaws gaping in anticipation. I was no longer afraid. I had faced the demons of the Duat, and in doing so I had faced the demons within myself. I was ready. Then a voice, a new voice, a whisper from the shadows spoke. He speaks the truth. And from the shadows a new figure emerged. It was not a god nor a demon, but a man. His face scarred and ancient, his eyes holding the wisdom of 1,000 lifetimes. He was Ptah, the great craftsman, the god of creation and artistry. He walked to the scale, and with a touch of his hand he transformed my heart, not into a feather, but into a scarab beetle, an image of renewal. The scarab, pulsating with life, a new life, then flew from the scale and settled on my chest, a new heart, a new beginning. The warrior's heart is heavy, for it is filled with sorrow, Ptah said, his voice a deep, resonant rumble. But it is also a heart that seeks truth. This man, Khepri, has not fled judgment, he has sought understanding, and in that quest he has proven his worth. The gods of the Duat looked on in stunned silence. Osiris nodded slowly, a small smile gracing his lips. Thoth recorded the new verdict in his great scrolls. Ammit, her hunger momentarily forgotten, turned and disappeared back into the shadows. I was Khepri, a warrior of the Nile, and I had faced my judgment. But it was not the judgment I had expected. It was not a judgment of my deeds, but of my heart. And in the end I had not been unmade, I had been remade. I stood in the Hall of Ma'at, a new man, a new soul, with a scarab where my heart had been, a symbol of my journey from death to a new life, from judgment to understanding. My journey was not over, it had just begun, and I realized my next step would be to find what happened to my old heart, the heart of Khepri the warrior, the heart that I had lost, but had also found.